Bring in Shannon Spake at Shannon Spake on Twitter. Shannon, you're finished traveling with the NFL, but I don't know that we've talked about this. How much of a success story is it for college football to complete its season, crown a champion, Alabama 13-0, and for the NFL, knock on wood, it appears to be set to have its 4 divisional round playoff games that are taking place on Saturday and Sunday completely on schedule. Again, I say knock on wood. It doesn't appear there are any major COVID issues right now for those 8 teams that are remaining, the Elite 8 of the NFL. If we get those games in on Saturday and Sunday, which all indications are would occur, then we're down to 2 teams that will advance to the Super Bowl. The AFC and the NFC Championship game will be played, 4 teams in total. Like, this is a remarkable achievement that I feel like is not getting enough attention for the NFL, not only to have played its season, but to have played its season in totality and to be completely on normal schedule is one of the great accomplishments, I think, in sports history.
Yeah, if you would have told me 8 months ago that we would have finished not only the NFL season, but the college football season, the NBA season, the Major League Baseball, the NASCAR, everything, right? I mean,
NHL's coming back today, by the way.
Everything. I mean, we were in such a state of unknowns and fear, and everyone hiding in their homes. And yes, absolutely. I mean, in Clay, I was, right there, a part of it all. It was so drastically different this year. The players on the field, even watching the national championship with the lack of fans in there. And I still am friends with the Alabama SIDs and PR folks. And so, I send out a quick text to them and let them know congratulations. And the first thing that they said back to me was just that they were so proud because of everything that the kids had done, right? Because the kids had to buy in. They're the ones that had to make this happen. And it was a very different year. These kids are in college, they're supposed to be going out, having a good time, hanging with their friends, doing all of these things that college kids do. And all of that stuff had to stop for football, for the bigger picture. And I just think, and look, even what Ohio State went through, all of the uncertainty that they went through, not even know if they were going to have a season, canceling games. I mean, all of the stuff that they went through. I don't know how I would have handled that at 19, 20 years old in terms of just kind of checking out and saying, nobody else wants us to get this done, so why do we want to get this done? But they stayed focused.
I talked with this with my wife about how, we're now adults, right? In quotation marks, right? But I'm amazed at the amount of discipline that these college kids show, because if you think about it, we had a babysitter over the other day, and she just finished her senior year last year, and she now is a freshman in college. I think that's probably the worst age to have to be experiencing COVID, because if you think about in your own high school experience and everybody out there, imagine what March to May to June is like for your senior year of high school. Typically, for anybody out there who's listening to us, it is a transformative moment in your life. Prom, decisions on where you might be going to college, graduation from high school, what your plans are going forward in life. In the last time that you will be as a high school student in your life, your senior year, those are some of the most important moments of your life, to say nothing of if you're playing basketball, if you're playing soccer, if you're playing sports, whatever they might be in that spring calendar, trying to finish that off, right? And then, then you go into let's say you go away to your freshman year of college. Usually your freshman year of college, for anybody out there who's fortunate enough to get to go to college, is such a transformative moment in your life as well, as you enter into adulthood, come to grips with what the rest of your life might be like, and experience the challenges of being a freshman in college. Their experiences for senior year of high school and freshman year of college are totally different than anybody throughout all of American history. And yet, many of those kids are able to handle that. And she was an example, like she was saying, she was going back to college. She goes to college in the Midwest in Chicago. And she said, yeah, when I get back to college, I have to stay in my dorm room for 10 days and not leave to quarantine before I'm allowed to do anything at all on campus. And I'm just thinking, think about how awful dorm rooms are for most people. And you're stuck inside one of those tiny little dorm rooms for 10 days where you can't even go outside. I mean, I think we're totally underrating the insanity that we are putting our young people through.
See, you sit here and say it's a bad thing for these kids to be quarantined. I'm thinking that
Well,
might have been
you
a good
probably
thing
would have
for
been
me,
good to
right?
be quarantined. It would have helped your GPA.
Exactly. Like I can't go to the bars Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday when I'm a freshman in college. It's completely different. And you think about like these poor kids that are seniors. They didn't get to have their prom. They didn't get to walk across the stage. You know, they're having, you know, cars parade outside their home. That's their graduation. It's very odd, everything. And I agree with you. The things that the kids have experienced, I couldn't imagine my kids being a senior in high school, freshman in college, or even at towards the end of their career. You know, you're trying to start your career, and now you're doing Zoom meetings. You can't go into these interviews. You can't start life. You know, I know Howard Stern talks about it so much. I know you and I both listened to him about, you know, young musicians coming up who can't go to restaurants and bars and play right now. It's stopped everything. Yeah, I mean, my kids, you know, this year, we look at this year as like a throwaway year. I mean, they're in a different school because we decided to do that. You know, financially, we didn't want to get locked into a tuition if there was going to be virtual, because then we would have to get a tutor. And it's kind of like a throwaway year because everything is so different. And I don't know how much they're really learning in the classroom because there are so many uncertainties as we continue to move forward into 2021.
You know, I talked to a teacher. This was a little while ago, and he was an AP teacher. He taught AP history, and in a relatively poor school district. And for people out there who are not familiar with the AP history plan, the idea with AP advanced placement is that kids can get college credit while they're still in high school.
Did you say that for me? Are you?
I'm letting you know out there. So these are the kids that have been working the hardest. By the time they get to their junior and senior years of high school, they then take an exam at the end of the year. And what he told me was, I mean, it was really just flat out heartbreaking. He said the number of kids that he teaches that have access to reliable Wi-Fi is minuscule. He taught in a rural area that did not have, it was a low income, relatively speaking, community. And he's like, man, these kids have been busting their butts for years to be able to get into these AP courses. And he said, people say, well, you just got to teach them remotely. He said, you know, I've got kids showing up at 7 a.m. to sit in the parking lot of a McDonald's on a highly unreliable laptop that they might have, if they're fortunate enough to have a laptop, to be able to try to get logged into class. And I just, it is infuriating to me that we have so many people out there obsessed supposedly with equality and making sure that everybody has an equal chance going forward. And yet we've pulled the poorest kids out of school, the kids without Wi-Fi at home, the kids without laptops, the kids without parents who are able to help them. And we have basically taken away a year of schooling from them that they will never be able to recover for the rest of their lives. We are going to be paying the consequences from shutting down our schools and not allowing kids to be in person for the rest of these kids' lives. Many of them will never catch up, right? You talk about a kid who in 6th or 7th grade, or God forbid, kindergarten or first grade, when they're learning how to read, these kids, I mean, there are kids out there that are never going to achieve anywhere near their academic potential because we shut down schools.
I cannot it's like even
nobody
imagine.
is even talking about this, Shannon. Like this, there's all this social justice warrior talk and all this, we've got to make sure that we mandate equality in this country and all these different things. And all these athletes are supposed to be, role models and speaking out. I haven't heard a single athlete come out and say, hey, we got to make sure that every kid's in school.
So
it's crazy to me.
I've told you many times I was not a great student. I could not imagine if I had to do virtual learning. It would be, there's no way that I would graduate on time, because I was a kid, like kind of showing up, doing my homework, before school, when we walked in, looking off other people, like that's how I did my homework. But that was because I was never taught. Like I pretty much raised myself. My mom worked 3 jobs. We didn't have that guidance. We did not have someone kind of showing us what we should have done at a very young age. So that was where I was. I was not a great student. I cannot even imagine if I had to rely on myself, 16, 17 years old,
for
to log
2
onto
years.
a computer. there's no way I would have been set back so far. And not only that, but athletics, because I've said to you before, swimming is what kept me on a straight line. Swimming is what kept me moving forward and set goals for myself for the future. And ultimately, it's what helped me end up where I am today in terms of everything in my life. And so if I couldn't do that because swimming was canceled or sports were canceled, so there's so many things that these poor, and you think about kids that can't eat, that's their one.
School lunch, school breakfast, yes.
We go to a public school right now. They offer free lunch and free breakfast. And that's like the one place that some of these kids are able to eat. There's so many long-term effects that we have no clue what's going to happen. You think about kids that are in abusive homes, that like that is that's their one outlet is to go to school. And to go sports, that's their family. It's tragic when you think about it from that level.
And it's just wild to me that, look, if you're fortunate enough to be able to afford private school, a lot of private schools are open. If you're fortunate enough to be able to afford tutoring for your kids, there's a lot of people who are doing this pod system to allow their kids to continue to be educated. If you're fortunate enough to have a parent who's able to stay home and work with you, Wi-Fi, reliable internet, computers that work, all of those things are rarities for many people in our country, yet I hear nobody talking about them, and I keep using sports as the prism. You were just talking about swimming for you, Shannon. Everybody out there listening to me right now knows kids, it might have been you, might have been somebody that you're friends with, who stayed eligible at school for sports, right? Like they had to get their grade to be able to play football or basketball or soccer or whatever it was. That's what they lived for while they were in school. And the hope is that eventually the light bulb comes on and you recognize, hey, I'm going to have to use this brain to make a living. But in the meantime, sports help to drive you to get that education. And we're just yanking that safety net completely out from underneath everybody.
Yeah, we talked about this many times, Clay, and that it's so sad and so scary. I don't know. I mean, there's a fine balance, because I do know. I mean, we just had a gym teacher in this area, 40-something years old, died of COVID. And I know 99% of the people are surviving, and then you get that one story. Thankfully, our school has been open, just like I heard you say earlier in the show that your district has been open.
Thank God that our school districts are open.
We go a mile down the road, though, in Mecklenburg County, which is like the major county for Charlotte. They're not. They're still doing virtual or half and half. And we just had a bulletin come out, I think yesterday here in the Mecklenburg area that says like we have all these rules now, where we have to stay in between this time and this time. And but thankfully the sports have still been open. My kids dive and swim, and so they're still doing that. And they're still in school, and they go to school every day, and it's very different for them as well. But they're adapting. But I feel worse for those high school kids, all those kids that are trying to start their lives and trying to form their lives somehow.
Yeah, and it's also crazy, like you just mentioned, Mecklenburg County, which is Charlotte. Davidson County is Nashville. We're not far from the county line. I was a public school kid, K through 12, in Nashville City Schools. Those kids aren't able to go to school right now. So, I mean, you're talking about the difference as if like there's some massive difference in COVID from,
a mile down the road.
It's not like COVID can see the county line, right? And so on one county side, kids are able to go to school. I'm betting that the county that you're in, the kids are probably more affluent. The kids are more affluent in my county school. So they already have advantages, and then we're magnifying those advantages by those kids being able to go to school in person, play sports, be able to live their lives. And the kids that are less advantaged are not being able to go to school. It's the exact opposite of what equality should be. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. It should be a major issue, yet nobody's talking about it.
Nope. And, they're getting, our school, thankfully, kids are only in fifth grade, so they're able to get laptops, and if you don't have one, and Chromebooks and all this stuff, and they send it home. But yeah, the Mecklenburg, the high schools, it's so overcrowded as it is in this area, like I said, 1 mile down the road, that a lot of those kids are not logging on. You hear all of these stories. So it's certainly going to be interesting as we see it move forward. But I know Danny G told you I wanted to talk COVID the whole time, right? Isn't that what he said?
That's exactly what he said. We'll talk to you next week.
We had a great weekend of football, didn't we, Clay?
We did. We did have an incredible weekend of football. I'm fired up about.
And we have 32 days to the Daytona 500. So how about that?
That's pretty fantastic. I'll talk to you about that next week. We'll be down to the AFC and the NFC championship game. That's Shannon Spake.
Oh my goodness.
This is OutKick on Fox Sports Radio.